India, comments from the press. The Hindustan Times, in its editorial titled "Violence is Unacceptable," says, on Tuesday afternoon in Delhi's Selimpur area, protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act turned violent. The protesters assaulted policemen, pelted stones, damaged vehicles, burnt a police post, and even attempted to storm a police station. The police retaliated by firing bullets in the air, tear gas shells, and resorted to lathi charge. 21 people, including 15 police personnel, were injured. Peace was, however, restored quickly. The police was effective but restrained, unlike its response in Jamia Millia Islamia on Sunday night when it was excessive. Local peace committees and residents who blamed outsiders for the protests did their bit in calming the mood, but the nature of the protests throw up disturbing issues. The CAA has caused legitimate anxieties across the country, particularly in the northeast, among Muslims and across universities. There is a strong intellectual, ideological and political argument against the legislation and the proposed National Register of Citizens (NRC). But there is a simple rule. These anxieties can only be expressed peacefully. The Constitution of India does not permit violence against the state. Laws will justifiably kick into force if there is an attempt to incite disorder, vandalize public property and assault public officials on duty. And the law enforcement machinery is then within its rights to respond, though proportionately and within the framework of the law. Those opposed to the CAA must recognize that the violent turn the protests have taken in several parts of West Bengal and increasingly in Delhi has alienated even those sympathetic to their position. It has eroded the moral authority of the protests. It has allowed the government to claim that the protests have been engineered by vested interests out to cause chaos and instability. It has created the grounds for security forces to step in. It has taken away the attention from the objections to the law and instead towards the history and background of the protesters. The infusion of religious radicalism into the protests has not helped either, for it has turned the debate from one about the constitution to one which is communal in nature. The government must allay the apprehensions caused by CAA. It must allow dissent and respect the right to protest. But the onus also lies on those at the forefront of these protests to abide by the constitution of the land. This will be the legally correct, ethically sound and politically wise route. The Indian Express, in its editorial titled "Reading the Sentence," comments, "The death sentence to Pervez Musharraf, Pakistan's military ruler from 1999 to 2008, marks a significant moment in the country's history. The verdict was pronounced by a special court set up to try him on the charge of treason for suspending the constitution and declaring an emergency in 2007 when as many as 60 members of the higher judiciary were detained. The coup within a coup, it was by then 9 years since Musharraf had ousted Nawaz Sharif, came at a time when the Supreme Court was deliberating the validity of Musharraf's bid for a second term as president. The court had already declared his 2007 emergency unconstitutional and illegal in a verdict in 2009. The decision to put him on trial under Article 6 of the Constitution, which specifies the abrogation of the Constitution as a treasonable offence and makes it punishable by death, was taken by the government of Nawaz Sharif in 2013. The death sentence is unlikely to be carried out. For one, Musharraf lives in the self-exile in the UAE. For another, the security establishment will ensure this does not happen. The army has already rejected the conviction of a former army chief and declared he could never be a traitor. Being on the same page as the army, the Imran Khan government is not about to rush to implement the sentence. The demands from the opposition too are likely to be muted. Even so, the verdict is significant, following as it does the Supreme Court quashing of the 3-year extension to General Qamar Javed Bajwa. But the real question is, will it change existing equations? The Pakistani army is capable of ditching individuals to safeguard its institutional interests. Since 2008, when Musharraf was forced out of office, the army has preferred to maintain ties with him only to ensure that its own power is not eroded by civilian governments. The Tribune, in its editorial titled "Fine Dining," writes, "With the introduction of the display of hygiene ratings on the doors of restaurants as mandated by the FSSAI, Haryana is all set to enhance the dining experience. Under the Eat Right India campaign of the central government, the food regulator has readied a trained manpower of food supervisors who will periodically check the